Hey, I'm Connor.
And I'm Johnny.
And this is Dad Shorts.
Dad Shorts.
That was awful.
It's all good.
This is going to be our season break filler show, unedited short topics on important life events between the pod.
So Connor, you're up. What's going on, man?
Well, it's been a little while, and the situation has calmed down, but we had a little bit of a problem at preschool recently with my son.
Wait, what?
We had a little bit of a problem at preschool. So my son Titus is 2 years old. He's in the twos room. 2 is a hard age, man. I don't know if you remember being 2. 2 is a hard age.
Yeah, I don't know.
For a straight week, we were getting incident reports from the preschool. Every time I picked up my son, I'd have to sign an incident report, which is basically, hey, look, your kid hit another kid, and we had to write it down because we're a preschool.
That's what we do when kids hit each other.
The kids are hitting each other. We have to document it because parents will flip if we don't. Now, I've worked with kids for a long time. I've worked in elementary schools. I've worked in youth groups. I've dealt with troubled kids. And this was an interesting experience because now it's my kid. You know, and this is my first kid. This is my first experience with my kid's causing problems. And it wasn't specific to one child. There aren't many in this class. It was not specific to one child. And so we were signing these incident reports. The school wasn't too concerned. They just wanted to let us know. The other parents weren't freaking out about it. I didn't have to go to any conferences or anything. But then finally, I think it was even on Friday, the last day of the week, the teacher actually came out and talked to us because my son had bit another student. And that's
wow, he's a biter.
That's when that gets serious.
Yeah.
And we've been on the receiving end of that because at our last daycare, my son was the one getting bit.
Yeah.
And I remember...
Yeah, I think you actually talked about that.
Yeah, I was really upset when it happened. I was like, you're telling me my kid's gotten bit? And it happened multiple times. And now my kid's the biter. And it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do with this? So when we talked with the preschool, the teacher came out and talked to me. And she was not too concerned, which kind of put me at ease.
Okay, that's good.
Because she's like, he's 2. We've dealt with this before. It happens.
Yeah.
And I asked her, what do I need to do as a parent to kind of reinforce what the school has going on? What can I do to make sure this doesn't happen? I don't want to be the parent who just ignores the issue, signs the paperwork and then...
Yeah, just turns around and whatever.
Yeah, I want to help fix the problem. How can I reinforce this at home? And she's like, well, just keep repeating, nice hands. So they call them nice hands. Helping hands. We use our hands to help people, not to hurt people.
I actually vaguely remember that from being a child, having nice hands.
Yeah. Instead of, fighting hands.
Yeah.
We don't want him throwing hands.
Throwing hands. That's a good one. That's weird. So I kind of had a similar revelation not too long ago. It was when Charlotte May was she had her teeth, but they were still I guess sore. So she was biting. I don't know what she was biting on. She was over a year old. I mean, this is maybe a year ago now. Over a year old, and she's playing, and she would stick her fingers in my mouth or something like that, or I would stick my finger in her mouth and we do this play bite thing, and I realized, oh wait a minute, I just taught my kid that it's funny to bite.
Yeah.
So I as soon as I had that revelation, I stopped, and because I did not want to get the letter from daycare saying, hey, your kid's been biting people. And I understand, like you're telling me that we got to sign these papers because if we don't, then the other parents might say something. Okay, so let's all sit down. The parents of my child, the parents of that child, right? So now there's 4 parents and a teacher in a room. And you're going to get mad at me because my kid punched your kid. It's like, dude, they're 2. I wasn't there. The teacher is there. Why are you yelling at me? He's 2. But
I think that is maybe the fear of all parents. And so my experience in it was we were worried. Like, we're thinking this is a really big deal. Marcy, not so much.
Yeah.
I was a lot more worried about it. I tend to get more worried about these things than Marcy does. Marcy's worked in preschool, so she's like, this is just the thing. She gets it. But to me, I'm like, no, this is like a real deal. I've had to sign papers, okay? I don't know if you understand.
I had to put my signature on something.
I had to put my name on something that said I acknowledged that my kid did something wrong, and I need to not do that anymore.
Right, but what are you going to do about it?
Right. Well, but that's the thing. That's why I asked, and the teacher was not too worried about it. It was very like, we have to go through the motions. We have to do these things. We have to document because it's working with kids, and I appreciate that. But it was not as big a deal as it was in my head. But I do have a confession to make about this, because it kind of surprised me how quickly, because I did this like every day for a week, pretty much, and it bled over into the next week a little bit. But it surprised me how quickly I went from like, oh my gosh, I think my kid's like struggling. I think my kid's having a problem, to, no, this is the teacher. Like, the teacher's got a problem. She's targeted my kid, and now they're just doing these papers because... And it amazed me how quickly my mindset shifted, especially because I've worked with kids, and I have been in that, like, no, I'm just a counselor, ma'am. Like, I can only do so much. I just have to let you know. That was surprising to me, and like looking introspectively at myself.
So he's not still doing it, is he?
No, this has since passed, thankfully. Okay, but part of it, I think part of the problem, a little bit of crying in the background, always a good sign.
Oh, I didn't hear it.
I think part of the problem, when this first started happening, I sat down and I talked with Titus about it, as much as the 2-year-old could. And I said, Titus, who's your teacher right now? Because at the time, there was not like a 2's teacher. At the time, It was an interim teacher because the last teacher had, I don't know if she retired, but she'd moved on. So they were in the process of filling the position. They had interim teacher in there. At the time, I was talking to him about it. I said, Titus, who's your teacher? And he just looks at me and he's like, me. Like, no, Titus, who's your teacher? Me. And he kept saying, me. And it's so much like that. It's almost like that Captain Phillips meme that's going around like, no, I'm the captain now. Because he was with an assistant teacher in a floater. And I think without that, like, nope, this is the teacher role filled. Like, my son, in his very strong type A personality, was like, nope, I'm in charge of this room now.
Wow, so it stopped once they got a permanent teacher.
He does have a permanent teacher now, and we have.
Okay.
It did stop before that. Like, I think part of it was just a phase. They're 2, you freak out for a little bit, but they're just kids.
So let me ask you, and this is so far off the topic, maybe it's not. Does Titus cry at all? Like really truly cry?
Really truly cry only when he gets hurt. But he will whine and fake cry a lot. So
Charlotte May doesn't get hurt. She'll fall down and scrape her knee, and you can see that it hurts, and she's got the tears, and it's like, oh, that hurt. Rub it off, babe. Rub it off. It's okay. And my mom taught her that, so she's pretty chill when it comes to injury. Listen, Kat, we're recording, and everyone can hear you. Unedited. But she started doing this stuff where, like, there have been a couple of nights where she's actually upset, and she doesn't know why, and she is truly crying. And we're going to come back to that in a future episode that we've already recorded. Where I saw myself just right in her eyes, but what got me onto that, sorry, cat's in the way. She doesn't really hit. She'll bat at my beard, because there's something she can play with. But she does throw these tantrums at 2, and I can totally see if there's a kid in the way. Like, she's kicked me, not really out of anger, but just because she's kicking her feet, whether she's happy or not, she just kicks her feet. And so she's kicked me before, and then she says, sorry, daddy, which is just the cutest thing. But I wonder if some of Titus's stuff is, well, I wasn't actually hitting anybody. I was just, swinging.
Yeah, I think that's possible. And it's often tantrum related. And no, I'm going to say this in the podcast too. My wife asked me not to call him Titus the bully because he's not a bully. He's 2. And at 2, you have a lot of big emotions. You don't always know how to handle those emotions. And it comes out in the form of tantrums, and it comes out in the form of swinging and hitting. And they put in the report like, oh, it was, about a toy. They both wanted a toy. One of them was playing with the toy, and then they put it down and walked away, and then the other one picked it up, but then child A wanted the toy back.
Right.
And every time it's been that, and just not knowing how to explain that to the other child. And I remember there's another point I was going to make on that. It just came back to me. The other thing I've noticed too, like with these little mini tantrums, and this will be the last thing and we can wrap it up, because this happened tonight, like literally happened tonight. My son's playing and just having a good time, and it was happening with a fork. And this is going to sound worse than it is, but he was like, he stabbed me with a fork as I walked by because he's just poking me.
Sure.
And it hurts. I took it away, and I'm like, no, we'd already talked to them about it. I took away the fork, and I'm like, no, you got to eat your watermelon with your hands now. I'm keeping the fork. And
now we have a tantrum.
We did avert it. We were on the verge, but we averted it because I can see in his eyes, and I think part of it was just my reaction to him in that moment. Because I got stabbed with a fork. Like, I was not happy about that. And I wouldn't say that I snapped at him, but I was like, no, give me that fork. And I took it from him.
Yeah.
And I can visually see in his face in that moment, like, now he understands, like, oh, I've hurt Dad, and he didn't like that. And I could see him taking all that and turning it inward. And that I could see it kind of building, like, now he's upset, and he's upset because he hurt me, and he didn't want to hurt me, but it happened, and now he's like, Dad's mad at me, so I'm upset, I'm sad. And so immediately I turned around and I just, because we're sitting at the dinner table, I'm like, hey, no, like, I'm okay, I am not hurt, I still love you, you just stabbed me with a fork. And just calmly explained the situation instead of, ow, no, hey, give me that fork. Instead of, hey, just like, maybe I shouldn't have snatched it from him. My bad.
I've noticed that, it's kind of like right along your lines. Charlotte May will do something, and I will snap at her. Like, I have an antique dining room table, and she's banging on it with a fork.
As 2-year-olds do.
As 2-year-olds do. And
my son does it all the time.
Right. But you've got to teach them not to do it.
Yeah.
Charlotte May, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that anymore. And I am sick of the whining like that. Because, like, she wants something, and I can't help you. I don't understand through the whine. Mm-hmm. So she does whatever it is. I snap at her, and I get, you get the dad voice, and you stop it right now. We're not doing that anymore. And then, within 30 seconds, you turn around and, hey, would you like some potatoes for dinner? And it's like, my kid is going to have emotional whiplash because 1 minute Daddy's pissed off at me.
Yeah.
And the next minute, Daddy wants to be my best friend. So
for sure.
What's going on?
Yeah, we've experienced that too.
Have you really?
It's the same kind of thing where, like, I have snapped at Titus for something because he was jumping headfirst off the couch, and we're like, no, stop that right now because you're going to hurt yourself. That. And then 2 seconds later, we're like, well, hey, do you want to go outside? But I think the difference this time is I kind of took a second after I snapped at him and stopped the behavior to be like, hey, like, look, that wasn't right, and that's why I was upset. I don't want to be stabbed with a fork, but I'm okay, and I still love you, and we're good. Like, we are on good time. Because I can also see, before I did that, I wanted him to eat his food. And I'm like, no, give me your fork. Hey, bud, eat your taco. And he was not going to eat those tacos. We tear up little pieces of quesadilla and we call it taco. He wasn't going to eat that. There was no way. But because I took a second, was like, hey, look, it's okay. Like, I kind of walked him back emotionally from the ledge. Like, I know that was a tense moment, but hey, come back here with me, and we're good. You can have your fork back if you eat your watermelon with it.
That's what I've tried to do, like, not in those words, but the same thing. Like, hey, here's your fork. Let's put some food on it.
Yeah.
Stop banging the table. Stop poking daddy. Don't poke your sister in the eye with a fork.
Yeah. I think the emotional whiplash is a good word for that. Like, you have to avoid the emotional whiplash because that will lead to a tantrum.
Well, it wasn't immediately, and that was my thing. Was like, I've noticed that if I do what you said, if I snap at her, and then I come back and say, try to redirect and we're gonna do something else, she doesn't have a tantrum. But I'm just thinking, like, she's gonna be 16, and like, how come daddy's bipolar?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I'm not. I'm just,
Yep.
There's some things that I need to teach you now, and I'm not angry with you. You're just not listening.
Yeah.
I can tell you no, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And it's not until I snap at you and snatch the fork that you listen.
Yeah.
And
this
so,
is,
I mean, that's...
This is totally going to branch into, I think, another episode that we're going to have in season 2, where we can talk a little bit about discipline and how do you stop the behavior, like in the moment when the behavior is something that needs to be stopped immediately. How can you do that is without, is it timeout? Is it spanking? Whatever. We can talk about that in much more detail in an episode of season 2. So,
yeah.
Because these are supposed to be dad shorts. So if you want to hear more about that, you're just going to have to tune in for season 2. Do we have a closer for these dad shorts episodes?
Dad shorts out?